Okay.
A little slow going, but I think we're getting it a little bit.
We're out a little more than we should be.
Okay, let me see the hammer you used.
The hammerhead, see the hammer? See how it's rounded like that? But this hammer is not so good on the outside.
Hey, wait, hold on. Let's put this over there. Throw that on up there.
I'm Rick with Rick's Restorations in Las Vegas, and I'm the guy that can restore anything. The pawn guys have been bringing me things for years, and they're trying to stump me one way or the other, and it still hasn't.
For one of the biggest restoration shows on television, the ending didn't come with a finale, it came with silence. On American Restoration, Rick Dale became famous for turning discarded and forgotten objects into museum-level pieces, building a reputation that made him one of the most respected names in restoration TV. But after years at the center of the show's success, everything changed suddenly, and without explanation on screen. So what really happened behind the scenes that led to his disappearance? And why did one of television's most successful formats collapse around him so unexpectedly? Join us as we uncover the reason why American Restoration ended. The golden era begins. On October 25, 2010, the History Channel premiered a reality television show that would capture the attention of millions of Americans. American Restoration wasn't just another reality show trying to manufacture drama or conflict. It emerged from an unexpected place, a series of guest appearances on another History Channel program called Pawn Stars, where a Las Vegas-based restoration expert was regularly consulted for his expertise in vintage items. That expert was Rick Dale, a metal artist who had been restoring antiques and vintage items for over 3 decades. His appearances on Pawn Stars caught the network's attention, and producers saw something they believed could sustain an entire series. Genuine passion for the craft, authentic skill, and the kind of personality that viewers wanted to follow week after week. When Rick Dale was brought in to restore items for the gold and silver pawn shop, he brought a level of technical knowledge and enthusiasm that resonated with audiences. What made American Restoration different from other reality television was its foundation in actual business. The show wasn't scripted from the ground up. It was built around Rick's real restoration shop, Rick's Restorations, located in Las Vegas, Nevada. The business had been operating successfully for years before cameras ever arrived. Rick, along with his family members and dedicated team including his son Tyler, his brother Ron, and skilled craftspeople like Cowboy, genuinely restored items that customers brought to their shop. The formula proved irresistible. Each episode featured a different restoration project: vintage motorcycles, classic cars, antique signs, neon lights, jukeboxes, gas pumps, and countless other pieces of American history. What separated American Restoration from similar shows wasn't just the variety of items being restored, but the human element. Viewers watched the same team, the same shop, the same familiar faces week after week. Rick's personality and straightforward confidence became the backbone of the series. The show's success was rapid and overwhelming. By the end of the first season, American Restoration had attracted millions of regular viewers. The network responded by significantly expanding production. Season 2 included 30 episodes. Season 3 expanded to 47 episodes across 2012 and 2013. And the show aired with high frequency during its peak years. The success attracted celebrity guests and special appearances. Rick restored items for famous musicians like Billy Joel and Jason Mraz, and also appeared on episodes alongside other celebrities in the restoration and entertainment world. But with this unprecedented success came something that rarely gets discussed in the early stages of a show's run: the behind-the-scenes dynamics that would eventually become fractured and unsustainable. What started as a dream partnership between a craftsman and a network would eventually expose the complicated realities of turning a successful business into a television product. and the conflicts that arise when creative control becomes a battleground. The magic of the shop. The first 6 seasons of American Restoration operated on a single, simple principle. The show focused exclusively on Rick's restorations in Las Vegas, documenting the daily activities of Rick and his team as they worked on authentic customer projects. This wasn't a show created to bring customers to the shop, because the shop already had a thriving business independent of television. It was just a show that was documenting an existing operation that had already proven its value and sustainability. What viewers saw on camera was, for the most part, a genuine reflection of what happened inside the shop. Rick and his team would receive customers with items that needed restoration. A customer might bring in a 1950s Coca-Cola vending machine that hadn't worked in decades, rusted and covered in corrosion. Over the course of an episode, viewers would watch the stressful process of disassembly, cleaning, repair, and reassembly. A non-functioning piece of history would be transformed into something that could operate and function again. The educational component of the show was significant. Each restoration project taught viewers about the history of American design, manufacturing, and ingenuity. A vintage gas pump wasn't just a curiosity. It represented a specific era of American commerce and travel culture. A restored motorcycle wasn't merely a machine, but also a window into the evolution of transportation and craftsmanship. Rick's 30 years of restoration experience meant that he could speak authoritatively about the items, their significance, and the technical challenges of bringing them back to life. But beyond the educational aspect was something equally important to the show's appeal: the relationships between the characters. Viewers developed attachments to the team. They watched Tyler, Rick's son, grow throughout the series. They laughed at Cowboy's gruff demeanor and surprising metal polishing skills. They appreciated Ted Haig's expertise with electrical systems. They witnessed Rick's interactions with his wife Kelly, whom he had met during Season 2 and eventually married. The shop became a character itself, a place viewers felt they knew intimately. The producers of the show, working for Left Field Pictures, had created something that television often struggles to achieve: authentic entertainment that educates while it entertains. There was genuine suspense in whether a complicated restoration would be completed on deadline. There was genuine humor in the personalities and their interactions. There were genuine stakes in whether a customer would be satisfied with their restored item. This authenticity was the show's greatest strength. Unlike manufactured reality television where drama is created through conflict and editing, American Restoration's drama was organic. The challenges were real. The deadlines were genuine. The expertise was legitimate. Viewers could sense the difference, and that authenticity was what kept them watching through 6 successful seasons. But this authenticity, ironically, would become the very thing that put Rick Dale at odds with the people who wanted to transform it into something entirely different. The cracks beneath the surface. By the middle of the show's run, something began to change behind the scenes. There were internal disputes between Rick Dale and the producers regarding creative control and the direction of the show. The producers and network executives wanted the show to evolve in ways that prioritized television entertainment over the authentic restoration work. They began making changes to how episodes were structured. More emphasis was placed on dramatic tension and emotional storytelling. The pace of episodes quickened, which meant less time spent showing the actual technical work of restoration. The problems that customers brought to the shop began to feel less organic, as though they were being selected specifically for their television appeal rather than their historical or technical interest. Most significantly, producers began picking the customers and items that would appear on the show, rather than allowing Rick's business to operate naturally with its authentic clientele. This was a big change in the show's approach. Instead of documenting how Rick's business actually operated, the show was beginning to stage restoration projects for the cameras. The network would select a customer and negotiate the terms of the restoration specifically for television purposes. This created a professional dilemma for Rick. His reputation was built on his restoration work and his expertise. The items his shop actually restored for actual customers with real needs represented his legitimate credentials in the antique restoration industry. But the television show was increasingly pulling him away from that authentic work and toward projects selected for entertainment value rather than craft significance. Reports from the time suggest that Rick expressed frustration with being confined to television obligations when his real business was suffering from the attention demanded by production schedules. The show required constant availability for filming. It demanded retakes and reshoots. It required coordinating with producers and directors. The more the show demanded of Rick's time, the less time he had available for his actual restoration business, the business that had built his reputation and provided income independent of television. Additionally, there were concerns about the direction of content. Some sources indicate that Rick was uncomfortable with the show becoming increasingly scripted and manufactured, moving away from the genuine restoration work that had made it popular in the first place. The show was, in effect, trying to transform a documentary of a real business into a more traditionally structured reality television program with narrative arcs and manufactured conflict. These tensions simmered beneath the surface throughout the mid to late seasons. Viewers might have noticed subtle changes in the show's pacing and structure, but the full extent of the disagreement between Rick and the producers remained behind the scenes. The show continued to air. Episodes continued to be produced, but the creative relationship between the main subject and the people creating his show was deteriorating. By season 5 and 6, the situation had become untenable. Rick Dale was reaching a breaking point, and the producers at the History Channel were beginning to consider options that didn't include him. The breaking point and the decision. The situation came to a head around 2014. The exact details of what happened remain somewhat clouded because neither Rick nor the History Channel has provided official statements about the split. However, the timeline is clear. After Season 6, which aired from June to September 2014, the History Channel made an extraordinary decision. In early 2015, it was announced that the show would be renewed for a 7th season. But when it premiered on January 1st, 2016, American Restoration had been completely rebooted with an entirely new cast and format. This was a complete abandonment of the show's original concept and Rick Dale's continued involvement. The timing suggests the break had been decided sometime during the 2-year gap between Season 6's conclusion in September 2014 and Season 7's premiere in January 2016. During this gap, significant decisions were made about the show's future. The network chose not to continue documenting Rick's shop. Instead, it changed the format to follow 5 different restoration shops located across the United States. Body Stroud Industries, Wheels Through Tim, Andy Bowman Jr.'s Restoration Work, Steve's Restorations, and another shop. This wasn't a negotiated transition where Rick was gradually phased out or given a farewell season. Rick, his family, his son Tyler, Cowboy, and all the other team members simply weren't part of the show anymore. They weren't invited to return. They weren't given a heads up about the format change. They discovered that they were no longer part of their own television show when the network announced the new direction. According to available reports, the decision appears to have been driven by a combination of declining ratings in later seasons and creative disagreements between Rick and the producers about the show's direction. Some sources suggest that Rick had indicated he would not renew his contract if the show continued to move in directions he disagreed with. Other reports suggest that the network made a unilateral decision to move in a completely different direction without consulting Rick extensively. What's clear is that by the time Season 7 premiered, the relationship had broken down completely. The network wanted to transform American Restoration into something different, and Rick was unwilling to be part of that transformation. Rather than continue with a conflicted partnership, both parties chose separation, though it wasn't a mutual decision in any meaningful sense. The network had the power to make the decision, and they used it. The immediate consequence was the cancellation of Rick's restorations as the focus of the show. But there would be longer-term consequences that neither party perhaps anticipated. When the new season of American Restoration premiered with its 5-shop format and new cast, viewers immediately understood what had happened, and many of them were devastated by the change. The reboot that failed. The network's reasoning seemed sound from a strategic perspective. By expanding to 5 different shops, they would have more content variety and wouldn't be dependent on a single location or personality. They could showcase different types of restoration work. They could explore regional differences in American craftsmanship and restoration culture. In theory, it was a logical evolution for a show in its 7th season. In practice, it was a disaster. The new format received significantly lower ratings and negative reception from the show's existing fan base. Viewers had invested in Rick Dale and his team. They weren't interested in a completely new cast of characters. The intimate, familiar quality of the original show, the sense of continuity and relationship that had built the audience over 6 seasons, was lost. The new cast members, despite their genuine restoration expertise, couldn't replicate the chemistry that had made the original show work. The format of jumping between 5 different shops in each episode created a disjointed viewing experience. Audiences didn't have time to develop attachments to any single team or story. The show that had been built on authenticity now felt fractured and unfocused. Moreover, the 7th season lasted only 13 episodes before the show was canceled entirely on April 1st, 2016. The final episode aired without any advance announcement or acknowledgement that it would be the last. Viewers simply never saw new episodes again. The show that had run for 6 successful seasons with a dedicated following ended not with clarity or closure, but with a whimper. The History Channel's gamble had failed completely. In attempting to move beyond Rick Dale and create a show that could sustain itself on format rather than personality and authenticity, they had destroyed the very thing that had made American Restoration successful. The network learned an expensive lesson. You cannot simply replace the heart of a show and expect the audience to follow. The cancellation after Season 7 was essentially an admission that the reboot had been a mistake. By choosing to end the show entirely rather than return to the original format, the network effectively acknowledged that American Restoration had been dependent on Rick Dale and his shop in ways that couldn't be replicated or replaced. But while the television show ended, the real consequences for Rick Dale and his business were just beginning to unfold. The aftermath and the shop's closure. When American Restoration went off the air after its 7th season, the direct consequence for Rick Dale was obvious. He was no longer a television personality, but the indirect consequences were far more severe and immediate. Rick's restorations had been built up significantly during the show's 6-season run, with the business benefiting from the publicity and visibility that came from television exposure. Many people knew Rick because they had seen him on television. When customers brought items to his shop, they were often enthusiastic fans of the show. The television exposure had transformed his restoration business from a respected local operation into a nationally known enterprise. When the show ended abruptly, that advantage disappeared overnight. Without television visibility, the shop's customer base began to decline. The publicity that had been driving business to his operation was no longer being generated. Following the show's cancellation, Rick's Restorations gradually lost business and eventually closed its doors entirely. The shop that had been the center of the show, the physical location where all the magic happened, ceased operations. For someone who had built his entire career on restoration work and craftsmanship, the closure of his shop represented a significant loss. The business that had existed before the show and that the show had been built around no longer existed. The television exposure that had seemed like an enhancement to an already successful business had actually become essential to its survival. There were brief rumors over the years that Rick's Restorations might make a comeback, but these never materialized into any actual reopening. Rick Dale himself has not returned to television or attempted to launch a new series, despite being offered opportunities to do so. However, Rick's life hasn't stopped. He has remained married to Kelly Dale, whom he met while the show was in production, and they have built a life together outside of the television spotlight. He is active on social media with his wife. They have created YouTube content and other digital media. He has authored books on vintage restoration. He has pursued other business endeavors. As of recent reports, Rick operates a business called My Best Font Forward LLC, focusing on laser-cut art and embroidery work. In the years since the show ended, Rick Dale has become largely absent from public life. The detailed timeline of his activities and current projects has become fragmented and uncertain. What is certain is that the man who, at the peak of the show's popularity, was a recognizable figure on a major television network, has largely retreated from the public sphere. The story of American Restoration's ending is ultimately a story about the collision between authentic business and manufactured entertainment. The History Channel gambled that it could transform a show built on genuine craftsmanship and authentic operations into a more traditionally structured reality television program with multiple cast members and a focus on entertainment value rather than real craft. That gamble failed. Could the History Channel have saved American Restoration by keeping Rick Dale in charge? Or was the collision between authentic craftsmanship and network entertainment inevitable? Did Rick Dale deserve more consideration from a network that built 6 seasons of success on his expertise and his shop?